Without being complacent, the New South Wales Government has a number of announcements to make this morning regarding the easing of some restrictions. Till 8 o'clock last night, we only had one case that was in quarantine and no cases of community transmission. However, since 8 o'clock last night, late last night, so it won't be included in today's figures, we have had one case which is still under investigation, and Dr. Chant will give further details about that. There is a possible known link, but obviously investigations are underway. So officially in today's figures, there's 0 cases of community transmission, but 1 in quarantine. However, I do want to foreshadow, and full openness and transparency as we've known to be during this process, that there has been a case identified since 8 o'clock last night, and it's important to note that because we can never be complacent. This is an insidious, contagious disease, and no matter how well we're doing, we have to always be on our guard. I'm very pleased to have with me today Minister Hazzard, Minister Mitchell and Dr. Lee, who will outline some easing of restrictions in various areas within their portfolio responsibilities. This includes community sport, it includes what students can expect in Term 4, and it also includes a easing of restrictions at weddings. Bridal parties of up to 20 can be on the dance floor, but I stress it is the same 20. You cannot have a roster of different ghosts of 20. It has to be only the same up to 20 who are part of the bridal party, not just the bride and groom. And this is really important because weddings and unfortunately funerals and other gatherings is where the virus is most contagious and spreads most readily because people know each other. And that's why, whilst we're easing this restriction, it is still a high-risk environment, and we ask both the patrons but also the function organisers to make sure that the bridal party up to 20 is clearly identified and is not different multiples of 20. It has to be the same up to 20 group that's on the dance floor. As I also said, Minister Mitchell will also outline some relaxation of events or school activities in Term 4, including sporting events and including assemblies and including music. And Dr. Lee will outline what parents can expect in the final weeks of the grand final seasons of community sport. I also want to stress at the outset that whilst the New South Wales Government is working our way through holding some type of fireworks event on New Year's Eve, can I stress it will not be like any other New Year's Eve we have had. The vast majority of us will be watching from home, but what we are doing is considering what options there are to do it in a COVID-safe way. I want to be clear that the New South Wales Government would never support or condone any activity which was not consistent with the health orders, and I really want to make that clear. We do want to have some type of event that evening, however, it will be vastly different from any other New Year's Eve any of us have celebrated in and around the harbour. So I just wanted to make that very clear. We're still discussing and having negotiations. We're hopeful that we will have a positive outcome, but it will be extremely limited in a COVID-safe way that is within the health orders. So I would anticipate that if people are starting to plan ahead already, apart from a ticketed event at a restaurant or other formal ticketed venue, most of us will be watching it from home, although we are still considering discussions with local councils who've indicated they would like to have some opportunity for some COVID-safe activity in their public spaces, and those discussions will be ongoing, and as soon as we have some firm outcomes we will let the community know. I'll now ask Minister Hazzard, then Minister Mitchell, Dr. Lee and then Dr. Chant will finish off today's formal discussions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Premier. Well, it's a wonderful spring day in New South Wales, and I think there's a spring in our step as we bring good news to the people of New South Wales who have partnered so strongly with the government to get us into a very positive position. You've heard the Premier make the announcement today that we had 0 transmission up till 8 p.m. last night, but it's still wise to be cautious. Dr. Chant will tell us in a few moments about a case that came in after 8 o'clock last night. So the spring in our step is tempered by the reality that this virus is still very dangerous and still moving around in the community in a way that most of us wouldn't even recognise until perhaps we're struck down with it. So as Health Minister, I want to positively say to the community, thank you for the partnership in the last nearly 9 months. It is spring, it's great, but be careful. The 20 people at a wedding, I just want to emphasise that if you've got 100 people at the wedding, there will only be a maximum of 20 in the bridal party who can dance. And if it's a lesser number in the bridal party, well, that should be what we see at that particular function. it's a case of still being cautious, but trying to be opening up opportunities for not just the bride and groom, but the bride and groom's parents and any of the other people who make up the bridal party. And it will be very exciting, I'm sure, because probably one of the single biggest requests to my office as Health Minister has been to provide some freeing up in regard to the bridal parties dancing at weddings. The sports issues, again, has been a great concern to many parents not to be able to get and see their children this week, particularly as the final season starts generally across the state for the various sporting activities. Minister Lee will give us the full detail on that, but it is a very positive day again, as we're saying to parents that they can have much more freedom in terms of coming to see their children play sport. But again, I want to emphasise that there still has to be some common sense provided. If you're in a facility that is closed in or where there's not a lot of room, that 1.5 metres between you and the next group of people is still critical to keeping this virus under control. We are living with the virus, we haven't beaten the virus, and that has to be understood by every single member of our community as the government partners with you and moves forward. There are also some major new opportunities that the Education Minister will announce for students in our schools, and of course there's also opening up. We've had meetings, Health has had meetings, and I've had meetings with representatives from choirs and ensembles and other music groups, and we are actually also freeing up a lot more in relation to the opportunities for our musicians, our wonderful musicians in our community, to enjoy more of what they've done in the past. So right across the state there will be the possibility of people being able to sing. If you're in a church, for example, a choir might have a group of 5 now, but subject to certain limitations. Again, recognising that aerosols are extremely dangerous. What comes out of our mouth when we talk or sing can be extremely dangerous as it carries the virus. So whilst we're freeing up so many new activities today, still I ask as Health Minister for people to exercise caution so we can have a fabulous spring and an even better summer. I'll now hand over to the Education Minister.
Thanks, Brad. Good morning, everybody. As we come to the end of Term 3, it finishes tomorrow, I just want to thank all of our school communities, our parents, our teachers and our staff for the wonderful job that they've done to keep our schools safe during Term 3. And I'm really delighted to say that we will be able to ease a number of restrictions in schools for Term 4. As Minister Hazzard said, we will be returning to school sport as it existed before the pandemic. We will be opening up inter-school and zone competitions. The only restriction that will remain is that we will not be able to have parents on school sites for school sport when a school day is on. That's just to limit the risk and not having non-essential adults. But of course, if school activities are taking place on community sport venues, they will be able to attend and follow the COVID safe guidelines of those particular venues. Also very delighted to say that we will be able to have singing and choirs back in our school communities, up to 5 students participating in those choirs, again with some COVID restrictions around that, including social distancing. And the same goes for music ensembles. We'll be able to have unlimited numbers of students taking part in music ensembles as long as they adhere to social distancing requirements. Music education is really important, and I want to thank the many groups who have made that clear to the government. I think it's fantastic that we will be able to see those activities resume in our schools from Term 4. We'll also be able to welcome parents back if they're coming on to the school site to help for an educational purpose, so things like reading groups, kitchen garden programs. If they're managed by the school and parents are volunteering to take part in that, they will be able to do that in Term 4. Year 6 formals and celebrations will be able to take place in Term 4 as well, and we are anticipating we'll be able to have school assemblies and presentation days at the end of Term 4 also. We'll be providing our schools over the next couple of weeks a few more details in relation to what guidelines they'll need to follow, but it's certainly my intention for those events to go ahead and, if possible, have parents attend, because I do think that's incredibly important. We'll also open up again to school camps and school excursions as long as those venues have COVID safe plans. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, we will also be able to have our orientation and transition programs start for our kindergarten and Year 7 students in 2021. Year 7 students will be able to go on high school sites after the 11th of November when the HSC finishes. for our kindergarten students, they'll be able to start their orientation programs from the beginning of term 4, and I think that's so important given that for those kids starting their first day of big school next year, to have that time in their school community this term is something again that I know our principals have really been asking us to look at. So very delighted that that will also be able to take place in term 4.
Thank you. As we know, community sport is so important to New South Wales. Millions of people play community sport throughout the year. Hundreds of thousands of young people do community sport each week. Community sport has been hit hard by COVID. Firstly, they couldn't play when the restrictions were really tough. Then we lifted those restrictions to only one parent per child. So it is great news today that we can announce that both parents can actually watch their kid from this weekend score a try, kick a goal. Both parents can go. In fact, more than both parents can go, as long as they practice social distancing, they follow the COVID safety plan, and most of all, they provide common sense to where they are and how they protect the community. This is great news, welcome news. We know that the finals are start this weekend. This will allow more than 2 parents to actually go and watch their children play and enjoy the sport, enjoy the time, and it's a great opportunity to get to as close to normal as they can. But as we say, is social distancing is important. COVID safe plan, following your venue's COVID safe plan, following your sport COVID safe plan is important, but most of all use common sense. I just want to thank all the parents, the volunteers for the sporting organisations, the sporting organisations themselves for following their health guidelines, and that's what's enabled us to return to community sport.
As the Premier indicated, to 8 p.m. last night we had one new case, and that person was in hotel quarantine. Since 8 p.m. last night there was a gentleman in his 50s diagnosed. That result came in late last night. He has underlying health conditions, is currently admitted to hospital, Campbelltown Hospital, and is currently in ICU. The person lives in a supported accommodation environment with a small household of 2 additional people. Those individuals have been tested and we'll have the results of those individuals later on today. The source of the infection is under investigation. We're exploring a number of avenues at this time, but as I said repeatedly, it's important we don't speculate and take a particular focus on the source, but at the moment we are investigating a number of lines of possibilities. A number of staff that support people in this situation have been contacted, will be isolated as close contacts if they were in contact during the infectious period, and will be tested. We'll update you and provide regular updates, but given this case came in later last evening, we thought it was important that we update the community. That's correct. We obviously want to maintain the privacy of individuals, but it's in a supported home accommodation for underlying health conditions, and but we're very keen that we protect the privacy of individuals, so we won't be releasing any other details, but we will release the results of relevant public health information about the case. At the moment, we would say it's under investigation. We know that the person attended a range of venues, and we're just working through that at this moment. So it's important that we don't actually speculate.
Can you say what suburb that home is? Campbelltown Hospital?
I'll have to confirm, but my understanding it is in Campbelltown, but I would have to check. But I really urge you, we really do not want to release any more detailed information than's relevant for the public health response to this. I think it is a lesson that we need to remain vigilant. Whilst we've had those pleasing case numbers and those no cases of transmission reported recently, we do need to remain vigilant. And I do thank the community for coming forward for testing. We have seen those testing numbers increase. The challenge for us is to sustain those, and also sustain them over the weekend. We normally see that drop off over that Saturday, Sunday period, and my challenge to the community is, can we get those testing numbers high over the weekend as well?
Premier, just on fireworks, do you think this is something in New South Wales is going to be response? Some of your colleagues have said they put up
Yeah, I think people definitely, and I'm in this group of people, we don't want to see what normally happens on New Year's Eve. None of us want to see the large crowds. None of us want to see breaching of the health orders, and I'm in that group. I'm a very cautious person, and I certainly don't want all of our good work literally go down the gurgler because of one event where people haven't done the right thing. So I want to stress, please, when we say there'll be fireworks on New Year's Eve, do not think about what's happened in the past. It will be an extremely different event, consistent with the health orders, very cautious, but again, a symbol of hope to our nation and the world that 2021 will be a different year to 2020. And so I think that's important. But please know that I will join the hundreds of thousands of people across the state who I'm sure are concerned about thinking this is going to be the same as last year or the year before. It will be nothing like that. It will be a very cautious, well organised, managed event, completely consistent with the health orders. And we are going through those details. And if we find during those discussions with councils and other bodies that it is too difficult, well then we won't proceed. But our intent, our strong intent is that there be some type of firework display that evening. However, I will ask for everybody's understanding in that the vast majority of us, including myself, will be watching at home from the television.
So will it be worth the cost then? 'Cause it is a huge amount of money to
Well,
build
I
the
think-
fireworks without getting that benefit of tourism.
Well, clearly, I can confirm that it will be a very short display just at midnight. So you won't normally you have the two, and it's quite a big thing. So it will be a very toned down affair. But I do feel it's important for the state and the nation because it's really a national symbol that's beamed around the world. It's almost our contribution to the world, and also I really want to stress that it's a thank you to all the frontline workers. I want all of us to think about those people who've helped us during the year get through what's been a difficult year, whether it's our health frontline workers, our police, our emergency services personnel, our customer service people, literally tens of thousands of people across the state who've helped us get through this really difficult year. And I remember last year, smoke haze covered the skyline, and there was a lot of debate as to whether the fireworks should proceed. And I think once it happened, people felt relieved that we were still able to have a feeling of normalcy during what was otherwise a very difficult time. And I'm hoping we'll be able to do the same again this year, although I do want to stress again, it will be a very toned down affair. But I do feel we can and should try to make something occur that evening, given what 2020 has been like. And I think a bit of hope and optimism is important for our soul and our positive thinking for next year, and that's what the government is intending to do.
So just to be kind of secondly, you said negotiations are still ongoing, but you also said they're toned down display. So can we say before today that there will actually be something on New Year's? Is that
Well, I would say, oh gosh, we've got to literally vote and come back. It will literally be a very much toned down affair. There will be, our intention is, and we're pretty sure we can pull it off, our intention is there be some firework display at midnight, but it will be largely toned down to what we've seen. And I want to stress, I'll be really upset if people think this is going to be a normal New Year's when thousands of people descend on the CBD. It won't be anything like that. It'll be a very toned down, cautious affair, which is in line with the health orders, but then again an important symbol to give all of us hope and the world hope for the new year. We'll just vote and come back, so excuse us. Yeah.
Look, as Minister Lee said before, it really depends on the venue, and what we're really saying here is the community have exercised fabulous, unbelievable support for what the health team have been doing in the last 9 months. And what we're saying is, if you want to go and see your children and possibly even your grandchildren playing sport this weekend, you can do it provided you know the place you're going to, the venue you're going to, you can actually do the social distancing and keep those important safety mechanisms against we've just heard. There's another case of COVID that unfortunately has appeared. We have to be cautious. We have to use common sense. So I implore the community to enjoy the opportunities but also do it sensibly with common sense.
Today we saw the first flight taken from Sydney to Adelaide. How great was that to see? And are you worried that, or are you hoping that that will be a permanent?
Look, it was a wonderful sight for sore eyes, I have to say, and a very welcome bit of news and welcome relief. And I do want to thank Premier Marshall and his government for having the confidence and the courage to do what they did, and certainly we won't let them down. We'll do everything we can in New South Wales to make sure we keep the virus under control. But it's also fair to say, given the size of our population, given what we've demonstrated in the last few months, I hope that all premiers will look to New South Wales and have confidence that we have the systems and the resilience in place to make sure that we're protecting citizens, not just those that live in our state, but across Australia. Well, as Premier, I heard Premier Marshall speak yesterday, and certainly, as we've indicated today, we're not going to have 0 cases every day in New South Wales. I want to make that abundantly clear. There will not be 0 cases of community transmission every day in New South Wales. In fact, there'll be some days when we have a handful of cases. There'll be some days when we have more. We are in the middle of a pandemic, and in fact, when Melbourne had its hundreds and hundreds of cases, we got up to around the early 20s, and we still managed the situation whilst having the existing freedoms and restrictions in place. So I only note today that Queensland is easing restrictions to get to where we've already been operating. So New South Wales has managed to have the conditions we have in place whilst we've managed the virus, and we hope that other states can have that confidence, and a good sign of that confidence is bringing down your border. Yeah.
So at the moment it's still 20 in your home.
Yeah.
Heading towards Christmas and Christmas lunch, obviously there are some
Yeah.
families. Would we look to ease restrictions
Yeah.
at 20 per home?
Look, as I said yesterday, and I've said previously, that will depend on the health advice and depend on where we are at the pandemic at that stage. So I think it's safest to plan around what are the current restrictions, and if we have any easing of them, of course we'll update the community. It's interesting to note Queensland's only lifted its restrictions with 10 people today, given their situation and their population, and they're not welcoming back 3,000 people from overseas as we are every week. So if you look at everything that we've been doing in New South Wales, it's fair to say I think that we've struck a pretty good balance of having people have as normal lives as possible whilst being COVID safe. But can I stress, and I felt this even amongst my own circle, I do feel a sense of complacency is creeping in, especially around people we know. So I do ask everybody, please do not let your guard down, because the second we do, we'll be in the situation we were a few months ago. It's taken us months to recover from that one seeding event we had from Victoria, and I don't want to see us have to go through that again. And next time it could even be worse. And so it's really important for all of us to stay on guard, all of us to do what is COVID safe. And if we feel we're in an environment where it's not COVID safe, we should get ourselves out of it, or at least talk to people around us, because unless we maintain that level of concern, unfortunately the virus can spread. And I never want to be in a situation where we go backwards. I think I said that back in March, April, following the lockdown, the first and only lockdown we've had in New South Wales. I said we never want to go backwards, and that's still our intent. But we need everybody to support us in that. And I hope today, by demonstrating our ability to ease restrictions when it's appropriate, that the community continues to support us. We did have nearly 17,500 people come forward and get tested yesterday, which is good. But as Dr. Chant said, we do not want to see that number dip over the weekend. I really want to see those weekend testing rates stay up as well. We don't want people to wait if they have symptoms. We need them to get tested immediately and not wait, because that means if the virus is circulating, we won't be able to get on top of it.
Minister Mitchell needs to get back to the House and the education question.
You're free. Thanks, Minister Mitchell. Thank you. Yep.
Have you thought any assurances that there's no more evidence
Oh, look, that's a matter for that body, and I think it's really important to allow that body to do the work it has to do, and we have to support their efforts in doing that important work. Oh, look, it's not my place to comment on that. We need to let that body do the important work that it's doing. I'm not aware.
With the changing of the community school restrictions on the weekend, we're now going to have all the 20 parents, all of the common cause at the same place, watching a single space, watching a single school. Is it time to look at the restriction on how many people you can have in an outdoor area? Because I can preempt protesters at Sydney University who are told you can't have more than 20 people in the group, saying it's a bit unfair that parents can go watch sport and journalists can all stand here with more than 20
Look, I think first thing is that there's always, right from the word go, common sense has been what has been applied by the community, and I think that should continue to be the case, because until we get a vaccine or a treatment people should be very aware that they are still exposed to this virus, and you could still end up in one of our ICUs on oxygen, and sadly you could possibly die. So people need to apply our, if you like, our new spring freedoms in a sensible way. And the sensible way is to remember that there are still rules, and the rules are that outside there should be no more than 20 people in a particular group. I would add to that you should also make sure that if you are in a group of 20 people and you don't have close family contacts with them, keep your distance. Keep the 1.5. If there's a household that has 5 or 6 people and there's another household that has 5 or 6 people, keep your distance between the two households, because that way you keep yourself safe, but you also keep your family safe and you keep the community safe. And I think the issues around demonstrations are a matter that have been talked about ad nauseum. I think quite simply, at the moment we are living in a pandemic. Behave sensibly and carefully and look after yourself and the community. Any other questions? Or can we all bolt?
Wonderful, thanks.
Thank you guys. Thank you. Bye.